London, 1822. Rain swept across the gaslit streets like a curtain drawn over sins not meant to be witnessed. The grand townhouse of the Duke of Ravensbury glimmered beneath the downpour, its windows alive with candlelight, its ballroom echoing with waltz and laughter. The season's most prestigious gathering unfolded beneath gilded ceilings, but at the heart of it all stood a young duchess whose life, within mere hours, would be torn apart. Eleanor Hawthorne Ravensbury carried herself with a grace that seemed woven from gentleness itself. Her gown of pearl silk brushed the marble floor as she moved, yet tonight her steps faltered. Whispers drifted at her back like thorned vines. Ladies tilted fans before their lips, and men narrowed their eyes with the satisfaction of gossip confirmed. Every glance cut deeper than the last, and not one soul dared offer her kindness. Her husband, Alistair Ravensbury, the young and newly titled Duke, stood across the ballroom in polished boots and uncompromising posture, his expression iron-hard. His dark hair framed a face admired for its austere elegance, but tonight there was nothing noble in his gaze. Rage simmered beneath his controlled exterior, as though he struggled not to reveal the depth of a wound no one else could see. It was as if love itself had become his enemy. Eleanor approached him cautiously. "Your Grace," she whispered, breath trembling, "you must hear me." "You will speak in the carriage," he muttered, voice low enough for only her to hear. "Here, you would embarrass us further." Embarrass. The word struck like a lash. She folded her hands before her, nails pressing into her skin as if pain might anchor her in place. Rumor had spread with lightning speed. A supposed liaison. A man from Eleanor's past. A childhood friend who had once kept her safe when life was far crueler. A few stolen moments of conversation earlier that afternoon had been all society required to reinvent history. She had only ever loved her husband. But he would not believe her. The music swelled, a romantic crescendo mocking the agony tightening her throat. Alistair offered his arm, not with affection but formality, and escorted her toward the ballroom doors. Their exit rippled through the crowd like scandal becoming truth. Rain splattered against Eleanor's skin as they stepped outside, freezing her where warmth had once thrived. The carriage waited, dark and ominous beneath the storm's old fury. A footman, avoiding eye contact, assisted her inside. She felt as though she were being sealed into a tomb. The door closed. Alistair entered opposite her, refusing to look in her direction. Lightning flashed, and in its harsh illumination, she saw not fury but hurt. A man betrayed in the most intimate way he could imagine. "If there is any justice in your heart," she whispered, "you would allow me to answer the accusation before condemning me." His eyes flicked to hers, a storm equal to the one raging outside. "Answer? I have witnessed enough with my own eyes. You cling to him the moment my back is turned. We spoke of family, of loss. Nothing improper." Her voice cracked. "I have done nothing to shame you. You breathe scandal," he spat, "and I shall not permit my name to be dragged into ruin." Her heart ached with disbelief. "Your name is mine as well." "And that," he replied coldly, "is a mistake I correct tonight." The carriage lurched forward, wheels cutting through waterlogged streets. London blurred into darkness. Eleanor clasped her hands against her abdomen, a gesture that had become unconscious these past 2 days, a protection over a truth she had not yet shared. Fear crept through her veins. How could she speak of life when he accused her of dishonor? Dawn was just beginning to pale the horizon when the carriage halted. Instead of arriving at their London manor, they had reached the Ravensbury residence in Surrey. Quiet, remote, used primarily as a stop in hunts. Alistair stepped out and issued a curt command to the driver. The footman opened the door, and Eleanor hesitated, sensing her world about to fracture irrevocably. When she stepped down, the Duke faced her beneath the shelter of the porch but did not offer his cloak nor warmth. The house behind him, once meant to be a sanctuary, now loomed like judgment. "You will remain here," he pronounced, each word an execution. "Effective immediately, our marriage is suspended." Her knees weakened. Suspended? You would exile your own wife for the sake of a rumor. His jaw clenched. "I would protect my title, my house, and my future children. When truth is compromised, Sacrifice must follow. Future children. If only he knew. Eleanor forced her shaking spine to straighten. If you cast me away today, your grace, you sever far more than affection. Affection? He scoffed. You speak of what you have already given to another. Pain blurred her vision. He believed her capable of such cruelty. He had never understood her heart at all. In the silence that followed, she drew a final breath of courage. I swear to you before God, I have never betrayed you. It is too late for vows, he murmured, unable to meet her eyes now. You will remain under my name, but you will no longer share my home. He turned away, as though the sight of her wounded dignity repulsed him. She stepped back, feeling the edges of her world crumble. Alistair, please. But the carriage door slammed, drowning her plea. Wheels rolled away, carrying with them the last fragile hope of tenderness. She watched until the carriage became nothing more than shadow consumed by dawn. Only then did her hand drift again to her abdomen. A child. His heir. The one truth she believed would have softened his judgment. Now it became the very anchor that held her to this place, and the reason she must endure. Inside the house, dust clung to every surface. Furniture covered in white cloths resembled ghosts preserving forgotten grandeur. A maid, young and nervous, lit candles and apologized for the state of things. Eleanor barely heard her. The walls themselves seemed to echo with abandonment. Her isolation had been made official by silence. That afternoon, while rain resumed its relentless tap upon the windows, she wrote a letter. Her script remained elegant despite the tremble in her hands. My husband. Though you have cast me aside, I remain bound by the vows we spoke before God and man. I shall not tarnish your name, nor speak bitterness of you. Whatever pain you believe me guilty of, I shall bear my sentence quietly. Yet know this, our story is not as cruel as gossip claims. In time, perhaps truth will find you. Eleanor. She signed with dignity still intact, sealed the envelope, and entrusted it to a servant for immediate delivery. The next evening, a rider returned with the news. The Duke had thrown the letter into the fire unread. Eleanor stood alone in the empty salon, moonlight washing over her pale features. Her hand rested over the life growing inside her, the one comfort she would not relinquish. Tears gathered but did not fall. I have lived my life in your name, she whispered into the silence, and I shall continue to do so, even if you refuse to see me. She walked toward the window, staring into the night where her husband had vanished. A single thought kept her breathing, steady and calm. If society would deny her a place, she would carve one from the ashes he left behind. The storm outside quieted at last, but the one within her had only begun. 5 years shaped Eleanor's quiet exile into a life rebuilt from abandonment. Ashford, once a neglected corner of the Ravensbury estates, flourished beneath her steady devotion. She restored what she could, but the truest evidence of her strength was a modest schoolhouse near the orchard, where children who knew hardship found learning, warmth, and dignity. Here, she poured herself into work that gave purpose to the pain she carried. James, her son, grew among sunlight and books, bold and bright-eyed beyond his years. His laughter softened the harshest memories, though his resemblance to the Duke remained a constant ache. Every look at him reminded Eleanor of love once believed and trust destroyed. She shielded him carefully from society's scrutiny, keeping her identity guarded beneath the plain title of Mrs. Cromwell. The villagers accepted the quiet, noble-spirited young woman and her charming boy without prying questions. James adored his mother with fierce loyalty, never doubting her stories of honor and goodness. Though she never spoke the Duke's name, he imagined a father brave and righteous, unaware that the truth lay in silence and banishment. Eleanor nurtured his curiosity, knowing knowledge was his best armor. Their peace was fragile and dependent on remaining unseen. One clear morning, servants rushed about whispering alerts. Carriages bearing the Ravensbury crest rolled through the village in grand procession. Eleanor's breath faltered the moment she recognized the polished insignia gleaming in the sun. Alistair had returned, not by chance, but with purpose. Rumor soon reached her through anxious villagers, questionable accounts, mismanaged funds, and a duke come to restore control. Eleanor listened in stillness, heartbeat pounding. She had always known this day would come. The man who believed her faithless now walked the same lane where she had learned to survive without him. She steadied her composure and continued teaching, though every knock of carriage wheels across cobblestones sent her nerves thrumming. James tugged her sleeve, curious about the newfound tension. "Mama, why does everyone fear the gentleman?" he asked. "He is the Duke, James. These lands are his," she replied, voice calm though her heart strained. His brow furrowed in thought before he asked with innocent boldness, "Do we belong to him too?" Her throat tightened. "No, darling," she said softly, brushing her fingers along his cheek. "We belong to each other, and to the truth, which cannot be stolen from us." Yet Eleanor knew truth could be buried, and discovered, by cruel hands. That evening, the village prepared for its summer gathering. Lanterns glowed above the square, and music warmed the air. Eleanor considered keeping James home, but he pleaded for a night with friends. She relented, hoping to blend into the crowd. The Duke arrived moments later. Alistair stood tall, his presence commanding attention without effort. Time had sharpened his features. Responsibility had hardened his gaze. No laughter, no softness remained, only the weight of authority and a constant tension in his expression. Eleanor felt her breath lock as she pulled her shawl closer, wishing to become invisible. James scampered ahead, drawn toward the fountain where other children played. His delight rang out in joyous shouts, unburdened by secrets. Eleanor's attention flicked constantly between her son and the new arrival, a dual vigilance sharpened by fear. Alistair scanned his surroundings with a discerning stare, noting changes in the estate and village. Then his gaze halted abruptly. Across the square, a child with familiar gray eyes and dark hair spun in circles chasing fireflies. For the first time since his arrival, the Duke's gaze lost its certainty. Recognition struck him with stunning force. The boy laughed again, the sound echoing like memory restored. Confusion furrowed the Duke's brow, disbelief chasing reason in swift succession. He took an involuntary step forward. His world, built on prideful conclusions, began to fracture. James stumbled, and Eleanor called out, "James!" The name rang clearly through the square. Alistair's attention snapped to her voice. Eleanor froze, caught in a collision of past and present. Their eyes met. The years of distance collapsed in an instant, replaced by shock, sorrow, and unfinished accusations. He stared as though seeing a ghost. She stood as though bracing for a blow. One heartbeat stretched into eternity. James returned to her side, slipping his hand into hers with absolute trust. That small gesture delivered the final truth Alistair could not deny. The Duke stepped closer, voice tense with disbelief. "Madam, may I know the name of your son?" Eleanor lifted her chin, poise forged through 5 years of adversity. "James," she answered, each letter measured and guarded. Silence hung, taut and perilous. The Duke looked down at the child, studying every familiar feature illuminated by lantern light. James peered curiously at the stern-faced stranger. "Good evening, sir," he said politely. "Are you here for the celebration?" Eleanor held her breath, willing Alistair to walk away, to leave the fragile world she had salvaged intact. But the Duke's stare followed her every movement, his suspicion evolving into realization. He opened his mouth, perhaps to demand answers or claim what he believed his due. Before he could speak, Eleanor whispered to her son, "It grows late. We must go." James nodded, bidding a cheerful farewell to the man whose identity he could not comprehend. Eleanor guided him toward the path home, her steps even, though fear pulsed beneath her calm exterior. Alistair did not chase after them. He stood motionless, gripped by the enormity of what he had witnessed. A child too perfectly shaped from his own likeness. A woman too full of dignity to be a liar. He watched their silhouettes fade into the soft darkness under the arching orchard trees, the family he had never known existed, slipping just beyond reach. The night's celebration resumed around him, in the moonlit quiet, but the Duke heard nothing. His heart, silent for 5 long years, awakened with a single staggering certainty. The past he had buried was not finished with him. Alistair's world unraveled when the silhouettes of Eleanor and James vanished beneath the orchard's leaves. He returned to his lodging with a mind unwilling to rest. The image of the boy's gray eyes, his own eyes, haunted him. Pride, once his justification, now mocked him for believing a lie. How had he spent years convinced betrayal had been dealt by the woman who once vowed to love him? Guilt, long dormant, rose with merciless force. As dawn crept into his room, he understood that ignorance was no shield against truth. The past he buried demanded reckoning. Eleanor began her morning with trembling poise. The encounter had shaken her, though she hid fear beneath a controlled smile. She guided her students through lessons, speaking with steadiness that cost her dearly. The children noticed tension in her voice, but adored her too dearly to pry. 5 years had taught her resilience, yet the memory of being cast out remained sharp. Alistair's appearance threatened to unravel everything she had rebuilt. If he intended to reclaim control, she would not bow again. By afternoon, a knock sounded. Eleanor dismissed the children with gentle haste before facing the man who had once been her future. Alistair stepped inside with hesitation. He studied the humble room, wildflowers in chipped vases, stacks of worn books, a chalkboard smudged with learning. This life revealed a truth he had refused to believe. His voice roughened with remorse. Eleanor. She held her composure like armor. You have found us. I wondered when discovery would come. He struggled to speak. The boy, he is mine. Her silence answered for her. His breath faltered. Why did you not tell me? You burned the letter I sent, she replied softly. I chose dignity over further humiliation. Shame scorched through him. You believe I wronged you, he whispered. You wronged us both, she corrected. And the cost was borne by a child who never deserved such loss. He closed his eyes against the truth. Tell me how to mend this. Trust must be earned, she said. Slowly. A fragile shift eased the strain between them. They spoke of James, his cleverness, his curiosity, his kindness. Pride crept into Alistair's voice, unmistakable. Eleanor saw genuine affection and agreed to a supervised meeting at the orchard. The following day, Alistair waited beneath blooming branches, rehearsing gentle greetings instead of accusations. James arrived carrying a wooden glider he had fashioned himself. The Duke knelt to admire it, asking thoughtful questions. They spoke of flight and freedom. Eleanor watched from a short distance, breath uneven with conflicting emotions. Relief brushed her heart as father and son found connection. Days passed. Alistair returned, each visit softening the hardened edges of his spirit. He helped with lessons, teaching James logic and history. James adored him instantly. Eleanor admired the transformation yet remained careful, refusing to let hope outrun reason. But gossip awakened. Aristocrats aiding Alistair in estate matters noted the child's resemblance. Suspicion sharpened like blades. One evening, after a tense confrontation with the overseer, Alistair sought Eleanor in the schoolhouse, candlelight illuminating his troubled face. They are talking, he warned. Cruel speculation will soon follow. Talk is their greatest weapon, she answered, stacking papers with calm restraint. Let us not surrender to it. He stepped closer, frustration and sincerity tangled together. Do you think I would allow harm to come to either of you again? She looked up, eyes steady. Belief is not so easily restored. He took a breath that trembled. Teach me, Eleanor. Show me how to be the man you deserved. How to be a father worthy of our son. His vulnerability disarmed her defenses. She saw not the proud duke who exiled her, but a man straining to correct what he shattered. Emotion swelled in her chest. I cannot forget, she whispered. But James deserves truth. And if your change is real, perhaps forgiveness may follow. Hopeful, he bowed his head. Whatever trial you set, I will bear it. Their nearness held promise and peril. Breath mingled. The air thickened with possibility neither dared embrace fully. That night, sleep refused to claim her. She sat by the window while James slept in the room beside hers, unaware of the storm forming around his existence. Moonlight revealed fears, that Alistair's remorse might fade with distance, that Parliament's demands and pressure would reclaim his attention, that he might return to London and forget the life he had stumbled upon. Pride urged her not to hope, yet her heart betrayed her. It reminded her of tenderness lost too suddenly. Alistair, too, lay awake before his departure. He walked the orchard path alone, passing beneath branches that held laughter hours earlier. Remorse gnawed, sharper than any wound he had known. The boy's voice echoed in memory, trusting. He realized he feared only one thing more than unworthiness: the possibility that Eleanor might demand nothing from him and remove herself from his reach forever. For the first time, duty felt like a chain, not honor. At dawn, he paused at the threshold of the schoolhouse, watching Eleanor through the window as she prepared lessons, unaware of him. Decision crystallized in his chest. He would fight for them, not as a duke defending reputation, but as a man defending what he loved. And if society wished to turn them into scandal, he would become their shield. Love was not weakness, but courage rediscovered. He reached for her hand before leaving, relief crossing his face when she did not pull away entirely. "I will return," he vowed. "And when I do, I shall claim the truth I once abandoned." "You know the cost of broken promises," she replied, emotion veiled behind control. "Do not force us to bear that weight again." They stood beneath drifting blossoms, moonlight silvering the orchard. Alistair memorized every breath she took, knowing he could not bear losing her again. "I will come back to you," he repeated, voice raw with conviction. Eleanor watched him leave as dusk swallowed his figure. Her pulse hammered with dread and hope woven inseparably. When he disappeared from sight, she pressed her hand against her heart, whispering the truth she could not yet speak aloud. She wanted to believe him, but belief required more than longing. Alistair's return to London was not triumphant. Every polished marble floor beneath his boots reminded him of the distance between the man people believed him to be and the man Eleanor had seen. Flawed, frightened, and capable of grave cruelty. Parliament gathered in a tense session, discussing estate scandals threatening his Grace's holdings. Courtiers whispered about the Duke's sudden trips to Ashford, suspicion blooming like rot. Their glances scraped across him, sharp with curiosity and malice, warning that his reputation now balanced upon a knife-edge outcome. He presented his estate findings, but his focus remained fixed on a sealed document placed before him, a proposal questioning the legitimacy of heirs if a duchess abandoned her marital duties. The Ravensbury name appeared plainly. Alistair felt a chill cut to the bone. They aimed to erase James's right to inherit before recognizing his existence. He saw again the boy's bright smile, the spark of curiosity, the unmistakable resemblance. He would not allow another injustice to befall his family. That night he wrote to Eleanor, urging her to come to London where they might confront the world together. No command, only plea. He barely slept fearing refusal. Yet the following morning, her carriage arrived. Eleanor descended with James at her side, both composed yet wary. Alistair approached, offering a hand that trembled despite his determination. She accepted, eyes guarded but not cold. James regarded him with wonder, unaware of the storm surrounding his life. Alistair promised protection, not authority, and Eleanor agreed to stand beside him, though trust must be rebuilt. Inside Ravensbury House, silence greeted Eleanor as servants recognized the mistress once cast out. She navigated hallways once filled with disgrace, now reclaiming them through quiet courage. James explored with awed delight, touching carved railings and velvet drapes. Alistair watched him, each step igniting regret for years lost to pride. He vowed the child would never again feel forsaken. News of their return ignited swift scandal. Society thirsted for spectacle. An emergency inquiry convened to judge the Duchess's conduct and the authenticity of the heir. Eleanor dressed with elegant restraint, wearing once more the ring she had kept hidden. She entered Parliament beside Alistair, head high. Gasps rippled when James appeared, his likeness to the Duke indisputable. Accusations simmered in the air like smoke. Asked to explain her disappearance, Eleanor responded with poise. "I was cast out without cause, yet I preserved the honor of my husband's name. I lived quietly, raising our son with faith in justice that has now come to demand truth." Her calm struck harder than outrage. Alistair followed, voice steadied by conviction. I allowed pride and gossip to govern my actions. The fault is mine alone. My wife's dignity was stolen by my own hand, and my son's future nearly lost. I reclaim them both today, not out of duty, but devotion. They are Ravensbury, and will remain so. His words filled the chamber with stunned quiet. Lawmakers, unable to deny the truth presented so clearly, accepted James as heir and restored Eleanor's standing. Later, a ball was held, the same ballroom where humiliation once occurred, now shimmering with rebirth. Guests greeted Eleanor cautiously, testing the shift in power. She responded with warm composure. Alistair never strayed far, steady in silent support. When music began, he stepped forward. "May I have the honor?" he asked softly. She searched his face, seeking arrogance and finding instead humility and longing. She placed her hand in his, and they moved with effortless memory. "Forgiveness is earned," she whispered. "I will commit each day of my life to earning it," he vowed. Their steps flowed like a story rewritten. When the dance ended, applause rose, but their focus remained only on each other. He bowed with genuine reverence. She curtsied with equal grace, acknowledging a beginning rather than an end. Afterward, in a candlelit corridor, he spoke again. "Allow me to court you, as I should have from the start, seeking your heart, not simply your presence." Eleanor hesitated, both wounded and hopeful. "I have lived with independence born of necessity. I will never again exist as someone to be discarded." "You will never be abandoned," he promised, emotion shaking his voice. "You are the courage I lacked." James, finished with his sweets, ran to them beaming. Alistair knelt, delighted when the boy threw his arms around him. Eleanor felt something inside her soften beyond resistance. Later, the family walked through the moonlit gardens. James raced ahead, chasing starshine across the grass. Alistair slowed his step, allowing the quiet between them to settle into comfort. He stopped beside a marble fountain, bathed in gentle light. "Eleanor," he said, voice tender, "I love you. I feared that truth, and it cost us everything." She exhaled shakily, heart aching with the echo of 5 silent years. Love did not vanish. Grief only kept it from speaking. He took her hand, pressing it to his heart. "Let me prove myself worthy of the life we might build. No fear, no doubts, only us." Her eyes glimmered with a promise long withheld. She let her fingers entwine with his. "Then we begin anew. Together." James darted back, laughing as he grabbed both their hands. Their silhouettes, framed by dawn's first gold, intertwined like a vow to the future. In the following weeks, Eleanor received visitors offering nervous apologies, some sincere, others seeking favor. She accepted with grace. James's education now blended privilege with the compassion learned in Ashford. Villagers admired the Duke joining lessons, laughter softening his stern demeanor. Evenings grew warmer. They shared dinners where conversation blossomed. Eleanor spoke of hopes once buried. Alistair confessed loneliness masked by duty. One twilight, she read unsent letters full of heartbreak and perseverance. He listened, shaken by what might have been lost forever. He asked if one day he might write new letters filled with devotion instead of regret. Eleanor's answer was a smile softened by tears. "Words written in love are always welcome," she said. Their future was no longer a fragile hope but a promise steadily built. Their journey had begun.